Good evening. Today is Tuesday, September 24th. Welcome to the Cranston City Council workshop that we're having in conjunction with the Planning Department. Okay, all right, better? All right, thanks, Tom. Good evening. Welcome to the Tuesday, September 24th special City Council meeting, which is a workshop in conjunction with the Planning Department. At this time, I'll ask the clerk to please take the call on attendance.
Councilman Ferry,
Present.
Councilwoman Renzulli. Here. Councilwoman Horian. Present. Councilman Donegan,
Present.
Councilman Campiano,
Present.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Here.
Councilman Wall,
Here.
Council Vice President Vargas, Council President Marino.
Present. Okay. And we'll begin the workshop. We will pass it over to Director Pizzullo. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President. So I'll be brief. We worked on this comprehensive plan with our consultant, Ashley Sweet from Weston and Sampson, better part of a year. Worked with the City Plan Commission, many iterations and edits of the document. We have passed that document and the end of August. So now that we're about to have our public hearing for the council adoption, I thought it was a good idea so that we could have a kind of looser discussion with members of the council prior to having our formal meeting on Thursday to get comfortable with the plan, what it includes, why we're doing it, and have a general discussion if you'd like. So I'm not going to belabor that. We have Ashley Sweet as a presentation, and she's going to come up and walk through what we've been up to over the past year and also where we're going to be going in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ashley Sweet. I am a team leader at Weston and Sampson in our planning group and the project manager for this project with the city of Cranston. Next slide. So tonight we want to just go over with you at a high level what a comprehensive plan is, why this is in front of you, talk you through the project approach that we've taken over the last year and what we plan to do for the next year after that, and then talk a little bit about next steps. And I'm happy to answer questions as we go. If you have anything, you don't have to wait till the end. Next slide. So what is a comprehensive plan? This is really your guidance document. This is your policy document that sets long-range policy to manage growth and development for the community. We cover things like the environment and natural resources, historic and cultural features, and it really attempts to try to balance the needs of the community and how you manage that with growth and development as the city moves into the future. And as I said, it creates this policy framework for future decision-making. All the decisions that are made in the city are supposed to be in concert with the comprehensive plan and consistent with the goals, policies, and actions of that plan. And it really looks to promote an open and democratic process. Public engagement is a big piece of the comprehensive planning process. We have done some public engagement in the first part of this, and we intend to do a lot more public engagement in phase 2. And really, the document is supposed to help strengthen the community, preserving what you love and want to protect, and improving upon where there are identified opportunities to make improvements for the future. Next slide. So a comprehensive plan is made up of chapters. These chapters cover a variety of different topics. Not all of these show up as distinct chapters. We often will talk about resiliency throughout several different chapters, but there's often a housing chapter, land use, historic and cultural resources, transportation, services and facilities. There are several new requirements that have happened since your last plan. We now have to address energy. We have to address natural hazards and climate change. So those are new topics that you'll see in the updated plan. And really, the goal of the comprehensive plan is to tie all of these components together. We don't want each of these chapters to act individually, but to work in concert, as I said, building the framework for the community to move forward. Next slide. So we start often at the top with a vision. We develop goals to achieve that vision. We then develop policies to achieve the goals, and then the actual action items. Those are the things, the concrete things that the city is going to do to, as I said, achieve those policies, which try to eventually reach those goals. We use data and analyzing that data. The first step of this process is an existing conditions analysis, where we go in and we update all of your existing conditions. And while we're doing that, we look for trends. We look at estimates, population projections, to try to understand where the city's moving, so that we can work with you to design those goals, policies, and actions to address, where the city is headed in the future. You have an implementation plan in your comprehensive plan, and that's what contains those goals, policies, and actions. Those are all fed or created through the process of updating your existing conditions, analyzing that data, and then taking the results of the public engagement, answers to survey questions, things that come out of workshops, comments that are left on the website, where the things that concern people about the community start to rise to the top, and people also like to tell us about what they love about the community, what they want to protect and see, move into the future. And so we use all of that information to help you develop those goals, policies, and actions. And the implementation plan is really the heart of a comprehensive plan. Everything else is the supporting material that elevates that implementation plan and lays that framework and blueprint to go forward. And that's all supported through maps, graphs, and charts. We include all of that information in the plan, so that the people who really want to dig a little bit deeper, all the data is there for them to look at and understand how we arrived at, where we are with goals, policies, and actions. Next slide. So the purpose of your comprehensive plan, it's really to coordinate growth and development through these series of different topics. We want to protect and manage your natural resources, but recognize that you have a range of housing needs. So how do you balance those things? How do you plan for land use when you know that you need to protect natural resources and at the same time need to allow growth and development to happen in a certain way? So that's really the meaning behind a comprehensive plan, is supposed to lay out all of this groundwork for the community, so that there's a document to guide policy and decision making. There's a document for the community to look at what the plan is for the future for the community. We cover things like economic development. It's important that you provide opportunities for economic growth. What does that look like? What fits in the right places and what's not appropriate in other places? And all of that policy that you establish directly feeds down into your zoning ordinance and your subdivision regulations. And those are the implementation tools. The zoning ordinance is very closely tied to your comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan lays the framework. The zoning ordinance helps to implement that framework in a lot of ways. Next slide. So there's two processes that happen for the adoption and approval of a comprehensive plan. We're doing this a little bit differently in Cranston, which I'll explain after I go through this. But the typical approval process is that you have the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing, which they have done. They will forward that draft plan to the City Council for the City Council to hold their public hearing, which you will do on Thursday. And then the city would submit that plan to the state to go through the state approval process. Next slide. Next slide. I think we missed one. Stop. Can you go to the state slide? Sorry. Thank you. So then once the state receives your plan, there's a state coordinated review process where it goes out to other state agencies who look at their respective topic areas, submit comments back to the state. The state will give us a set of their comments. We will address those comments, and then the state will make a determination on an approval of the plan. So next slide, please. In Cranston, we are doing this a little bit differently. We're doing a two-phased approach, and that is because of the result of a state law that said that your comprehensive plan is not valid to deny a land use decision if it's older than 12 years. So at the time that you went out to RFP, there was a window of time where your plan was less than 12 years, and now it's going to be older than 12 years. And we want to prevent a situation where you cannot use that plan to deny a land use decision if you had valid reason to do so. So the approach that we proposed to the city was to do this in two phases. The first phase would be to do a complete data update and existing conditions update, which we have done. We would hold a public workshop during phase one, which we have also done. We would establish a project website, which we have done. We would develop the required chapters that don't exist in the current plan. And I mentioned that that's energy and natural hazards and climate change. So we did develop those. That's all brand new text. And that we would then have a planning commission public hearing, which we have also done. And we are at the point where we are having the city council public hearing on Thursday. Phase two of the project will be to review and revise that policy. So that's when we're going to take your existing goals, policies, and actions, and we'll work with staff, other boards and commissions, and comments and feedback from the general public about what the real issues are in the city, what the opportunities are that we want to capitalize on, and how do we move the city forward to achieve those larger goals. We will implement a public survey. We will have additional public workshops in phase two. We will continuously throughout the process continue to update the project website, eventually finalizing the chapters. We'll bring that plan back to the Planning Commission for approval. We'll bring it back to the City Council for approval, and then we will submit it to the state for their approval. So really in phase one, there is very little in the way of change to policy. We've almost entirely maintained your existing goals, policies, and actions with the exception of a couple of requests that were made by staff to either remove something that was no longer relevant or remove something that had already been achieved. There was no reason to carry forward. We did develop a set of goals, policies, and actions for the energy chapter and for the natural hazards and climate change chapter, because those didn't exist before. You didn't have that text in the document. It's a new requirement since your plan was written. So we did develop those as new chapters. All of that has gone before the Planning Commission for their review. We made edits based on their suggestions and requests. And then now you have those documents in front of you to consider at public hearing for adoption. Next step, next slide. So our next steps in this process are to continue public engagement. We were just talking about, we need to sit down and roll out another plan for public engagement, talk about, where is that piece of this going? It's a huge, important component. Phase two is much more planned to be much more public engagement heavy than phase one was, because in phase one, we're not changing policy. We're just updating data as much as possible. So when we move into the phase of wanting to change policy, we definitely want to engage the public as much as possible and have them be a huge part of that conversation. We will have those policy discussions. We will amend your goals, policies, and actions accordingly based on all of that feedback that we get. And then we'll finalize those plan chapters and bring them back to both the Planning Commission and the City Council for review and approval. And that's all I have, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Sweet. The next steps, the phase two, I know you can't give an exact timeline, but generally, how long should that process take?
So I have to look back at the scope, but I think we planned for about a year.
Yeah, more or less, 12 to 18 months.
Okay. I want to thank the planning department, the planning commission, Ms. Sweet, for taking on this very important piece for the city as a whole. Before I was even on council, 3.5 years ago, as a constituent, this was very important to me. And it's ever more important, given the clock that is now ticking, given the state legislation that had passed. So I appreciate that. But at this time, I'll open up to the floor of council members. If anyone has anything, any questions. Any council members? No? Okay. Anything else you guys want to add other than that? It looks like. we're
I
all
don't
set.
have anything else for you
Okay.
unless Jason does.
And
Okay.
one other thing, Jason, before you
Sure.
go to, because I may have missed it. Do you have a kind of table of contents for each of the sections, section 1, 2, rather than having to, okay, I'm looking for,
I don't believe
Sorry.
it has, do we have a table of contents? I don't think,
if you could do that, that would be
Okay.
much easier to use, the updated comp plan, given it's 234 or so pages.
Okay. so,
thanks.
so it's, the chapters are, we have our individual chapters. So are you looking for a table of contents for like all of the sub-contents as well, like all the
If it-
subheadings?
Just the chapters would just be great enough, because
Okay.
then we could,
That's easy.
easily find what we need within that chapter.
Okay.
Thanks. Yep.
One thing I just wanted to mention is that if you look at the 2012 plan to now, it's organized very differently. The goals and policies have been refined. They've been, basically restacked in a way that I think is more user-friendly. But one thing that, if you went back to the 2012 plan to now, though we didn't change policy, we certainly had to change some of the goals and policies and action items. Some of them were defunct. Some of the action items were accomplished. Some of the action items could never be accomplished. So we came up with a matrix, and we have that available if you're interested. And we went through and we color coded everything to say, how did we, was it a policy that we attempted and shelved, or attempted and passed, or something that's just like literally defunct? So we had to go through here, this exercise, and try to, go through all of the goals and policies. I think there was another one as well, Jonas, that had purple in there. We had like a couple more colors. Yeah, this is the one. So, again, this is a very tedious process of trying to sift through what we have and what was actually relevant for 2024. Yeah, this is the document. So if you're interested in this, we have this, and we can send it to anyone. It's fine. But we're fairly pleased with the outcome now. But if there's anything that anyone sees that they're uncomfortable with, like, let's talk about it now or between now and Thursday, so that if there's data that's missing or something we want to talk about, that's what we can do. But the document as it stands has been, published, for what, good month now. So, is there any general comments or any questions we can answer while we're all here as we worked on this?
Councilman Ferry.
So this is going to be very general, okay? On a day-to-day basis, say for the city council, can you give us any examples of things that have changed between 12 and 24 that's going to basically affect how the council does business when something is brought before them? Is there any changes that are obvious, changes that were needed, changes that are going to affect the way we do our business?
I think the first question is to change the way you do business. No, this should be business as usual. As we said, we didn't change policy, but the only things that were actual changes would be the Plan Commission voted to remove the A20 upzones of Alpine Estates. So all three of those lots, the Peppermill, Sage, and Caraway, all three of those, they recommended to go back to A80. So they're deleted from, so there's the sheet right there. So that was their recommendation. That's your choice if you want to keep that or change it back to the way it was. Those are the only changes that were made to the future land use map. We did not change them. We did not change the map or the formulas or others other than those, and those were taken out from the Plan Commission. So that's what the Plan Commission did. As far as, what was the second question, Councilman? Like, asking like, does this make our lives easier? Is it better?
Will things be more defined when something comes before us, that it's not like as confusing as those three always were?
Well, I didn't think those were confusing. I just think that those are controversial, not that they were confusing. They're very clearly, stated as rezones. There still are about 1,500 parcels that are straight miszoned. Those were a policy decision in the last plan, and those are the policy decisions right in front of you. But as far as our vast swaths of the city miszoned, yes, that remains. And that's going to take some will to change that. For instance, we have whole neighborhoods in the city, off of Cranston Street near the police department. Entire neighborhood zoned heavy industrial, but they're all houses. It's a miszone. We have huge areas that are zoned open space, but they're also industrial or something like that. There's a number of things that we've identified here. The simple answer is we've had enough trouble with these individual zone changes, but trying to take on 1,500 at once, or even taking them in blocks, it's a lot. It's a very heavy lift, but those still remain, and I think we need to address those eventually. And phase 2 will not solve that. The phase 2 of this effort will not just solve that rezoning problem. Was there another question in there that I might have missed?
I don't think so.
Okay. We're trying to get everything, which we're trying to, along, this is one big ordinance. We're working on this comp plan. And then we're also working on, refining the zoning code as a parallel track along with this, because there's things in the zoning code that have sat there since the 1960s. And, the idea of an internet didn't exist. And there's all kinds of strange things we still do, which need to kind of get modernized. So we're going through the zoning code now. Those are things we're trying to fix. Does this help us fix some of those things? Yeah, but you're not going to fix everything. We still have to literally fix them.
I have one more question
Councilwoman Marzulli.
related.
Thank you, Madam President. Director, I'm curious if at the end, when both phases are done, is this still going to be kind of a stagnant PDF document that lives on the website? I know how to search PDF, but it's not conducive to the public. Similar to the point that Council President made about the chapters, it's not easy to look at this document. It's similar to, I'll just give an example, the driver's manual. We recently took the driver's manual and made it into like web pages so that there's links and you can go to chapter 1. You can get everywhere you want to go with sub pages rather than kind of turning through a PDF. And I know that
That's
a totally different,
That's an interesting idea.
it might make people participate more, even the council, if we're trying to do policy stuff, be able to look stuff up in the comprehensive plan. Not everyone is, sitting home reading a 200-page PDF on a Friday night like I am sometimes. I don't think.
Right. I'm with you.
Okay.
I'm with you on
So
that.
is that
It's
something
not an
that-
easy document to read.
Is that a heavy lift to do something like that?
That's something I think if we come out the other end and we get the document approved by the state, then I think if we want to talk about user friendliness and how does this document get, disseminated easier and more kinds of, what would you say, ways of presenting the data, we're all for that. But that'll be after we finish and get it approved by the state. things that I think we've done better over the years is that, like say the future land use map, that used to be a crayon drawing and it was just a piece of paper. The future land use map is a layer in the GIS. We use that all the time. It's very, very helpful to use it like that. The goals and policies, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of goals and there's a lot of action items. And maybe we get into the habit of revisiting those action items on a more regular basis. The state allows us to update the plan 4 times a year. We do comprehensive plan amendments by like amending the future land use map, rezones here and there that we have to do. But an amendment to the comprehensive plan could be an entire chapter, just gets replaced, or hundreds of things can get changed as an amendment. So, we're absolutely not opposed to saying, revisiting action items on a more regular basis. It's just, it's a lot of work and people's patience wears thin when we're going through 200, 300 action items. It takes some stamina to do this.
And to the comments that you had given Mr. Ferry about the different, 1,500 houses, you're saying they need to be a rezone because it's industrial, but obviously there's houses. When do you, I don't want to put you on the spot to make you tell me that in exactly 2 years that's going to be fixed, because that's unrealistic and I don't want you to give me an unrealistic answer, but what is the plan is there a plan to fix that stuff step by step after this whole process is done? Because I would think that this would be part of this process, but obviously that's why you're here to tell us what is part of it and what's not.
Well, I would say after the phase 2 process, there's going to be a lot of rethinking how we do zones and what the zones are, and do people generally conform to zoning or not conform to zoning? The biggest problem that I see in our zoning code is about 90% of our houses don't conform to zoning. They just don't conform. The zoning was laid over existing areas and they don't conform. The same goes for those houses in industrial zone and different things like that. It's going to be a costly proposition to do that many rezoning, public hearings and the notices. It starts to add up. That's probably one of the biggest challenges, is that we just don't have the resources, but if we want to do this, we can allocate it, we can plan for it. We can say, all right, we might need $50,000 one year to do a bunch of rezones. But that's a costly proposition. So, it's labor, it's money that we have to do, and plus a lot of public hearings to do this. So, I'm making it.
There's no way to alleviate that, the public hearing, to streamline that process, correct? It has to be how it is.
There's probably a way to streamline it, and we'll have to put our heads together and figure that out. But, we could do probably, batches of rezones. Start with the low hanging fruit, I guess, and see how that goes. I don't think there's going to be much opposition of rezoning someone from an M2 heavy industrial to an A6. There should not be any opposition to anyone saying, I don't want to have a residential zone. The problem with these industrial zones, commercial zones, that people have houses in them, is that there's problems with banking. They have issues with mortgages. Like if you're in an industrial zone, you're stuck with, and this is what bankers have told me. So I don't know if that's still true, but things like that, it hurts with refinancing. So we should fix these things.
And as we want to increase housing, they want to put more housing in those areas, is that a problem considering they're industrial and the other people they just grandfathered in because already
They are
they have-
grandfathered. But the problem is, they're a house, and maybe a lot of people don't even know they're industrial until they try to get a new mortgage or refinance, and then there's some strange interest rates that attach to that. That's just unnecessary. Those kind of problems we should be able to fix for folks. So yes, that's one thing we want to talk about in the future.
Great. Thank you, Director.
Last call, anybody else? Councilman Campiano.
Thank you, Madam President. So if those houses and it's zone industrial, if they want to do any work to that house with any permitting or an addition, does that affect them doing that?
I'm not entirely sure about building permit, but again, if it's an M2 zone, you have outrageous setbacks. You have like, you need 60-foot setback, you need 80-foot on the side, like the lots are only 5,000 square feet. So yeah, it's caused problems for people, and some people have had to get variances for things like that. But again, nonsense. It shouldn't be. So we should be, wiping away those things for all time. Because they're clearly not going to be industrial areas. Again, we'll be talking a lot about the zones and nonconformity and, making zones match the neighborhoods, because we should not have 90% of the city nonconforming to zoning. That's something that has to get fixed. It's persisted for the mid-60s until now, but I think it's this decade we should wrap that up, I think. So this is the document. I know it's a lot. It's hard to read. I can only read it in small bits, but is there anything else we want to talk about?
Councilman Paplaskas said something.
Thank you, Madam President. Real simple things I noticed reading through this document, or, talk about cultural integration in Knightsville in chapter 10. It mentions the Festival of St. Anne, it's supposed to be the Festival of St. Mary.
Okay, we'll get that fixed.
And then
Can you send me those corrections?
I'd be doing my ward a disservice if I didn't bring that up. And then it mentions Mechanicat in here as well. And it talks about one of the challenges in Mechanicat is the traffic backing up onto Reservoir Avenue. So I don't think they were meant Reservoir Avenue. Maybe they meant Phoenix Avenue or Cranston Street.
Okay, those are good corrections. You found more, of course?
No, that's
Okay.
all. For now.
Hey, can you send me those?
I will.
Because I want to make sure like we can have those at the ready and we can make those changes on Thursday. Yeah, there's a lot of little details that I think we fixed, and thank you for those catches.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Councilman Ferry.
I'm going to go back to a general question again. Is there anything within the plan that points directly to the fact that we need to have more affordable housing in Cranston? Is there any way you can point your finger at any part of this specifically?
Yes, the housing element has specific goals and policies and action items to get us more affordable housing. The policy, we didn't change it because again, we weren't changing policies from the 2012 plan, was I believe something like 30 new affordable units per year. And that seemed low, but we actually did like 0 for most years. So it hasn't been until this council that we did quite a bit of affordable negotiating with these big projects. I think we've gotten probably upwards of over 100, 150 in those past 2 years. So we've been making progress. We've taken, that plan to heart. We've actually made quite a bit of progress on that. When we rethink this plan in phase 2, we're going to be thinking a little bit broader in terms of what we can get as affordable. There's going to be a lot of talk about accessory dwelling units, things like that are going to be, we're getting calls practically every day. Can I do this? Can I do an accessory dwelling unit? How about here? We haven't seen a lot of them materialize yet, but the word is out. People know that they can do these in the city, and there's a whole process we're developing so that we can regulate those properly and efficiently. But we don't get credit from the state as affordable, and Annette could correct me if I'm wrong on that. Right. Affordable, attainable, accessible, a lot of A words that we can talk about housing. So, right, people are coming to us with tiny homes, like a tiny home village and different. There's ideas that are coming to us, and they're percolating, and we can talk more about those in the next phase. It's a big issue. It's the biggest issue right now.
So will this plan help us get the shovels in the ground? Will it be a better process? Easier process?
We don't, I can't necessarily get shovels in the ground. I can help people get through the regulatory process. Get them to the building permit process and get going, but planning can't really do much. I don't have any more levers to get like people building, so. I wish I could, but we just don't have those levers.
Thank you.
Just on those points, it may be repetitive for some of us in the room or people who watch the video. It bears repeating the accessory dwelling units. The surge in that is due to the change in state law. It's not unique to
Absolutely.
Cranston, so just so everyone knows. And then the issue of housing is chapter 5 in the comp plan. Is the latter part of that section that deals with the housing affordability for Cranston. Does anyone else have anything to ask? Comment?
We feel okay. We feel okay going into Thursday. Feel better.
Councilman Donegan.
Thank you. Are there any changes specifically to the different zones and overall to the zoning and minimum lot requirements that might help address housing development and affordability, or I guess help increase supply?
We're definitely thinking of that for the next phase, since we weren't changing policy, and that's a big policy change. We did not change that, but that's definitely going to be in the next round of discussions about changing the zones and changing the minimum areas and things like that. Again, we've talked about this. We have whole neighborhoods that are 4,000 square foot lots. Everything is A6. That's our minimum zoning. That's a problem. We've been able to, with the state has made surgical changes to the law where those non-conforming lots that are, within these neighborhoods, these built-out neighborhoods, those can be built without zoning variances now. So we're seeing a lot of that doesn't even go to the zoning board or the planning commission anymore. So the state has actually, done this for everyone to say, yeah, this non-conformity issue has to stop. But we still need to catch up and, make the zones look like the neighborhoods.
Councilwoman Marzulli.
Thank you, Council President. So Director, am I understanding correctly that we don't actually have policy around ADUs right now, that the state has given cities and towns the ability to build ADUs, but we, the city of Cranston, do not have specific policy. If someone calls you and asks you how to do it, we don't have the steps yet?
As far as I understand, it's not enabling legislation. It's the accessory dwelling units are allowed by right across the state. We are coming up with local policy in terms of how you process them through the building permit process, because they're more than just an addition onto a house. They're, the addresses, the utilities, the parking, it's their building permits, just like houses. And we have to be tighter with how we account for them, because the state requires us to account how many that we've done. We would see these as in-law apartments in the past. And, the idea of an in-law is gone now. There's really no such thing as an in-law anymore. So it's hard to keep track of who has done the in-laws over the past 5 years, because they were just being treated just like an addition, not as an additional unit. So, yeah, we have all of the authority from the state to process these. We just need to be clear in terms of how you're going to do it locally. These are
Does
usually.
that come through the council? So say I called you tomorrow, I wanted to put an ADU in my backyard so that my parents could live there. Would there be a way for me to do that now? Or
Yes.
there is not?
Yeah, so if you have a lot that's over 20,000 square feet, they're allowed by right. So in those areas that are over 20,000, you can do an accessory attached dwelling, like a cottage, by right as an accessory structure on your property. If you're underneath 20,000, you're below 20,000, they can go in the existing house or an existing garage or accessory structure, as long as you're not expanding the footprint. So yeah, and people are working without those guidelines.
And is that going to, and just tell me if this question is going too deep. That ultimately going to affect, if say it wasn't my parents, it was, my sister with their kids, and they have to go to the schools, and now we have a lot of people in different areas crowding school. How does that work? And is there anything in this growth and development in this plan, or will there be in the next phase to address that? Because I know that's gonna be an issue. Obviously, we need more housing is
Yeah.
more people, more kids in schools, then we're gonna need more schools, so.
I
if this is a
don't
20-year
know
plan.
of a mechanism to address, the, potential for overcrowding. It would be like any development happening anywhere that the school department has to deal with, the school kids, whatever that population is, and reshuffling districts if they have to. My sense is that these are going to be much more diffuse and spread out throughout the city and much more lower intensity than I think people are thinking about, whereas past 2-3 years, we were approving units at like 150 units here, 200 units there in one place. It might take us 5 years to get to 50 units or 100 units of ADUs, who knows? But I don't think it's going to be like that, that explosion of units. And also, who would move into these type of units would be probably, smaller household size, maybe people coming right out of college, definitely our in-laws would still need them, children who are like looking for their first house. So these are not where people are going to settle down and put roots down and have an ADU. These are for different segments of the population who really have been underserved for a long time. That this type of housing accessibility just hasn't been available. But it's a significant segment, and it's one that's been, hasn't been given enough attention. So, but I don't think it will have the impact on city services like that. But if it does, then we'll have to address it.
Great, thank you, Director. Thank you for your work on this. I know it's been, a long time coming. We've gone through a couple of budgets, making sure that you were able to apply the grant from the state and talk about other grants and free lunch and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate that this is getting done and we're able to talk about it. And I hope in the next couple of years, I'm excited to see it all come to fruition.
Well, we'll have something we can live with for the next, period before we get the next phase done. But, we can live with this for a while. And yeah, we're gonna have to get serious about all these issues in the next phase. So.
Councilman Donegan.
Thank you, Council President. Director, I'm looking through table 13.5 on page 13.7. It's page 190 of the PDF. Looking at the zoning districts and minimum lot requirements, like I'm looking at B1. It says, so for B1, 2-family dwelling, minimum lot area is 6,000 square feet in this document. But when I go and look in Municode, it says 8,000.
Okay. That looks like a typo. You need 8,000 for the 2-family, but still 60 feet of frontage. So we can fix that, Jonas. Just make a note of that. We'll correct that. Good catch, Councilman.
I would say maybe take a look at all of those lot requirements that are there, just because when I'm looking at it very quickly, flipping between 2 different screens, it looks like some of them were also reduced down from what I'm seeing in Municode. So
Let us take a close look at that. And if there are discrepancies, we'll bring those to you on Thursday. That's just that we'll correct that. If there's any discrepancies, there shouldn't be any changes in this from what's existing now, because we're not changing the zoning. If that's a Scribner's error, then we'll fix it.
Thank you. Not that I don't, in terms of a policy standpoint, I don't have an informed position, but given what was articulated to us, that there are not significant policy changes within this document that probably should, that sounds, what I'm seeing here is counter to that, but
Are you talking
to
the zone,
discuss it.
this zoning table?
yes.
Oh, okay, there should be no changes with the existing zoning. So if there are errors in this, we'll fix that. We'll definitely fix that, so.
I think that now wraps up the workshop.
Well,
Dr. Zula, you good?
We feel, this is a workshop for all of you, so if you have anything else, and again, we're at your disposal, so if you have any other questions, comments, you need extra, additional clarification, we're here. Beth is working on this very closely, Jonas is working very closely on this. So, and if you find any other small errors, by all means, bring them to us and we can get those ironed out. We'll bring those to you on Thursday, you can just make those amendments. If you want to see any other backup documentation like that color-coded document, I can send that out if you'd like. Yeah, we feel fine, then we'll move forward and get this thing done. And one last question, Councilman, when is the final adoption scheduled on this? Do we have that scheduled yet?
September 30th.
Okay, September 30th. All right.
Madam President? If this were to happen to go through and we miss any of these small details and it goes all the way through, is there a way to fix it after it's through? Or is it going to be, if say Councilman Donegan missed that 6,000, once this goes through, if the state missed it too and it just went all the way through, would that now be the law of the land?
Two things, if it's a scrivener's type error, that's one thing, but it would really be for the solicitors to make that determination, because I can't really answer that question, and I don't know if part of the state adoption process would allow for that type of modification. I don't know if Director Pazula, you've had experience in that in the past.
The state wouldn't really comment on what our zones are and the performance standards of the zones. That's a local decision. Again, if there's any errors in this, those will be fixed. We didn't intend to change any of that in this phase. If there are errors in the plan that we find, in the next, few months or whatnot, we could do an amendment. We can package them together as an amendment, or just live with them until we get the next phase. If they're not going to change anything or yeah, exactly. Yeah, we've been, with the amount of back and forth and changes upon changes upon changes getting through the Plan Commission. It's a minor miracle we're here now with this document in this shape. It was a lot of work, and but we're not perfect. So if we find something, and we're not going to take it personally, we just some things slip through. So
That's it. All right, at this time, ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Okay, all those in favor? Aye, good evening.